Have you ever really thought about the humble submission form? You know, that little box where you upload a document for a job or a conference or a journal? Well, it turns out the rules behind that form are so much more than just administrative details. So let's dig into this, because what we're about to uncover is a fascinating story about fairness, inclusion, and what it really means to be a responsible organization.
It seems like such a simple question, right? Should we require a nice, polished PDF, or is an editable Word document okay? You'd think, hey, what's the big deal? But this choice, it turns out, has these deep and often totally invisible consequences.
And that brings us to our first big idea: how a simple administrative rule can end up acting as a kind of gatekeeper, deciding who gets to participate and who gets left out. So here's the crucial point, and it's a really big one. When an organization demands a specific file format that's not a neutral act, it seems like just a small technical detail, but it can accidentally create what the source calls a disciplinary hierarchy. This basically means the choice of format can end up picking winners and losers between different fields of study, not based on the quality of their work, but simply because of the software they traditionally use.
Now, what's so interesting here is how this lays out the dilemma. If you have a PDF-only rule, you're giving a huge leg up to folks in STEM, where tools like LaTeX are super common. But you're putting up a major barrier for humanities scholars, who pretty much live in Microsoft Word. Okay, so you flip it around, and a Word-only rule does the exact same thing in reverse, shutting out people who create beautiful work directly in LaTeX. No matter which you pick, somebody is put at a disadvantage.
And this, right here, just brilliantly illustrates the ideal we should be aiming for. The quality of someone's research, their ideas, that's what should matter, not whether they're a wizard with a specific piece of software. This is the core principle that any truly fair policy has to be built on.
Okay, so if mandating just one format is the problem, the solution seems obvious, doesn't it? Well, hold on. Let's get into the next part of our story, because this seemingly simple fix, it has some surprisingly dangerous hidden pitfalls.
And here it is, the common sense fix. Just be flexible. Allow people to submit in whatever format they're comfortable with. Problem solved, everyone's included, right? But as the source material points out, it is not nearly that simple. This is the first major trap, what the authors call false neutrality. See, just because you allow Word documents doesn't mean reviewers won't subconsciously see a slick LaTeX-generated PDF as more rigorous or serious. It also creates this kind of hidden expectation that eventually the author will have to figure out how to create that perfect PDF themselves, placing that whole technical burden squarely on their shoulders.
And then there's the second, and arguably more critical flaw, the accessibility paradox. You might think PDF is always better, always more professional, but get this, a poorly made PDF, one without the proper tags for a screen reader, is an absolute nightmare for users with visual impairments. In fact, a badly structured Word document can sometimes be more accessible. So just allowing both, without enforcing any standards, can actually fail everyone.
And here it is. This is the core twist of this whole thing. This quote, man, it just lands with such an impact. A passive, will accept anything policy doesn't create fairness. It does the complete opposite. It outsources the hard work of making things accessible and professional to the very people who have the fewest resources to do it. So if just passively allowing everything isn't the answer, then what is? This is where we pivot from the problems to the real solution, building an active framework of equity and genuine support.
The path forward isn't about just letting things happen. It's about actively helping people succeed. It starts with creating excellent, accessible templates for both Word and LaTeX users. Then you have to offer real hands-on help. And this is crucial. Accessibility can't be an afterthought. It has to be a mandatory requirement. And finally, you have to train the people in charge, the reviewers, to recognize and fight their own biases.
Now, this slide shows what parity of support really means in practice. It's not about having one great template and one that's kind of meh. No, it's about providing equally high-quality tools, guidance, and direct human support for both camps. It's saying, whether you use Overleaf or Word, the organization has your back. And to make that support totally real, the proposal suggests something incredibly specific and powerful: a format support desk that promises to help any member with conversion and accessibility, with a guaranteed 72-hour turnaround. That's not just a policy, that is a genuine service.
This brings us to the conclusion, where we kind of elevate this whole discussion from a technical rule to a genuine philosophical commitment that an organization makes to its community.
This is the recommended policy statement from the source, and it's just brilliant. It's welcoming and inclusive right up front, But it's also firm about the non-negotiable standards for the final product, accessibility and long-term preservation. And right there, in black and white, it promises that support is available to everyone.
Ultimately, what we're looking at is a policy built on these 4 pillars. It must be inclusive, welcoming people no matter their technical background. It must have integrity, making sure knowledge is preserved for the future. It must protect sovereignty, avoiding total dependence on one single corporation's software. And most importantly, it must achieve true equity, not through passive permission, but through active, dedicated support for everyone.
When you put all of this together, it becomes crystal clear that we're talking about something so much bigger than just a checkbox on a website.
And that's the ultimate takeaway. A truly thoughtful submission policy is a promise. It's a promise an organization makes to its members. It's a statement that says, we value your contribution, we respect the tools you use, and we will invest our own resources to ensure your voice is heard and preserved. It is, in the end, a covenant of care.